Hey guys, welcome back. So now we are jumping into Heroes Reborn issue 1 with the return of Mephisto's Justice League. And with this happening, it feels like we're getting a continuation from a long time War of Realms cliffhanger. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch our spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so getting into Heroes Reborn, we're dropped in through the narration of Blade. And when we jump in, we're thrown into this world where Blade, he tries to reach the Avengers, but no one picks up at Avengers Mountain because it's not there. But with us getting much of this from Blade's perspective, with us looking through the eyes of someone who's new to all of this, much like us, for the most part. Because in this world, the Avengers are missing, and the main heroes are the Squadron Supreme of America. And a lot of this feels like what we had seen from Mephisto during War of the Realms, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But when we jump in, we initially start off with narration from Blade, who has woken up in this world or reality to where at this point he's been here for about 2 weeks. And when we initially find him in East Los Angeles, he's confronting Robbie Reyes and he's asking him like, I'm looking for the Ghost Rider. But this Robbie, he doesn't recognize Blade, he has no idea what he's talking about because he's never been Ghost Rider. And with the way that Blade asked him, like he initially thought that Ghost Rider was like a new drug on the street. And I'm pretty sure like the sound of Blade's voice didn't help either, because you know, he just say, hey, I'm looking for the Ghost Rider. So Robbie just took off on his bike, he said no, like he just dared to be different in this universe. But after this, we then go to Washington DC, like days later, to where we go to the White House, to where Dr. Doom has just pulled up with the Crimson Gem after recently losing Latveria. But with doing this, he mentions that he's taken the gem straight from the tomb of Cyttorak, which means that Cain Marko had never became Juggernaut. But in this world, rather than Cain Marko, Dr. Doom had taken the Crimson Gem of Cyttorak and he had become the Juggernaut instead, using this new power to overthrow Western civilization and using the gem to convert himself into pretty much a one-man army. But before he can level the White House, he's immediately confronted by Hyperion. And for Hyperion, who really needs no introduction aside from just Superman in Marvel Comics, like there's no other way to put it. But when we see him here, he's very much the Hyperion that we're used to. And I mean, as far as same identity, Mark Milton, same powers, super speed, strength, flight, shoots atomic beams from his eyes. But even with as similar as he is to the Hyperion that we know, like the scale of his strength in comparison to this Doom or Dr. Juggernaut, like it's ridiculous. And as far as like any debates or a comparison to Hyperion's power versus the Crimson Gem, like I would not recommend using this instance, because once you step into the whole manipulated reality type thing, like nobody wins that argument. But after this, when we then jump over to Nighthawk from the Squadron Supreme, and it's like from here where we really start to get like the Justice League vibes, which we kind of already got from Hyperion, with him verbally being more Superman-like. But aside from that, everything else about Hyperion has always been very Superman-like. But as far as the rest of the Squadron Supreme, we jump over to Nighthawk, and in this world, he's not wearing hockey pads, like he's Batman. He got the Night Jet, he has his version of Batarangs, and over here, he's even referred to as the world's greatest detective. But here's the thing, because we had also seen this before back in Jason Aaron's run of Avengers, during War of the Realms, because back at the time when the Frost Giants attacked the nation's capital, they were then stopped by DC's greatest heroes. And at the time, of course, they meant Washington DC, but even still, clever wordplay on the part of Jason Aaron. But even then, when this had happened and we were introduced to not just the Squadron Supreme, but the Squadron Supreme of America, like back at the time, this was still occurring within the main Marvel universe. And when we had seen this take place, it was like one of the many things that Mephisto was doing while he was pulling strings from his cell in Las Vegas and using Philip Coulson to assemble this team in Washington. And back at the time when this happened, and once again, smaller scenario, it was really just this team. But when this happened, T'Challa, he sniffed it out and he confronted Coulson about it, to where then Coulson called in the Squadron Supreme of America to arrest T'Challa, and T'Challa was pretty much like, no, you ain't finna do that. But even then, T'Challa had recognized that this wasn't actually the Squadron Supreme, and it was physically them, yes, but as far as their memories and who they had believed themselves to be, like it had all been fabricated by someone else. And back then, T'Challa let them know, like when you start asking questions and Coulson stops answering, just remember that the Avengers are not your enemy. But yeah, like as far as what we're seeing from the Squadron Supreme of America, it very much seems like the continuation of what we'd seen in Avengers issue 18, with Mephisto pulling the strings and Philip Coulson spoon feeding the memories to mold this team into a new image. And if I'm not mistaken, like the last thing we had saw from that, like with Mephisto, who was still in his cell at the time, was him saying like with all the strings that he'd been pulling, like with Tony Stark and like his plans for Moon Knight and Ghost Rider, like he was pretty much just going to move forward, making moves on everything. Which is pretty much what I believe is the case of what's going on here, but just on a much larger scale. But with getting back to Heroes Reborn, we then follow Nighthawk, which takes us over to the Capitol building, to where we then find the Black Skull, which on one hand is the Venom symbiote who's possibly bonded with the Red Skull, and when Nighthawk goes after him, we find out that a number of threats have escaped from the Negative Zone, which is why all of this chaos is just breaking out at the same time. But as we continue to pan through and Blade continues to narrate, it's here where we see not only that the Avengers are missing, but also a number of the members had never became heroes at all. Like there's no Doctor Strange, Jennifer Walters, she never became She-Hulk, Bruce Banner had long been taken to the Negative Zone, which had taken the Hulk out of the picture, and for as long as anyone can remember, the Squadron Supreme, they've just been the world's mightiest heroes. And as far as up next on the Squadron, we see Dr. Spectrum, who much like Hyperion, he looks the same and his powers appear to be the same, except in this case I believe he has a bit of a super soldier origin. But aside from that, he looks the same, he has flight, he makes energy constructs, which I guess makes him the Green Lantern of the team. But when we see him, he's heading into space to get a better view of a bigger threat that's much further out, while telling Carol Danvers, who had never became Captain Marvel, to stick with the Delta team and cover the airspace over the Pentagon. And when this happens, we see Tony Stark watch Dr. Spectrum leave the atmosphere, but in the case of Tony, he's still pre-Iron Man Tony Stark. Weapons dealer, drinks like a fish, and he had never went through the whole tripwire booby trap incident, threatening his life with shrapnel heading to his heart, so he's never lived the experiences that literally changed his life. And when we go back to Blade, who's trying to hunt down the different Avengers, he doesn't even see Wakanda on the map, because in this world it was dismissed as a myth like years ago. The Spirit of Vengeance, the Star Brand, they're considered too dangerous and sent to the Negative Zone. Danny Rand never became Iron Fist, and it's believed that Captain America had died in World War II, with there being no history or record of him being found in the ice. And with seeing that, like Blade realizes that a majority of these changes, they had stemmed from Captain America never coming back, because in a world where Captain America never comes back and the Avengers aren't formed, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, they never turn into heroes. But then on top of that, with the Squadron Supreme being designed and formed by Coulson to be more lethal, and in this reality, the Squadron kills Quicksilver and Wanda absorbs his speed through her chaos magic, which then makes Wanda the super speed sorcerer, the Silver Witch. And for the Squadron Supreme, you have Blur, who pretty much looks like he's gonna take Marvel from this into a Flashpoint event. Like it was me the whole time, Barry. But after this, we then go to Zarda Shelton, who effectively is like the Squadron Supreme of America's Wonder Woman, and instead of Themyscira, she's from Utopia Isle. But out of all the changes from this team, I think I like hers the most, and mainly because her sworn enemy is Mangog, who's now become the unstoppable Allgog, which likely means that Jane Foster had never became Thor, and Mangog at some point had successfully destroyed Asgard, to where after that he had become the final Allfather. And I mean, like, as far as his backstory, I'm just guessing. But as far as like where this could go between just Zarda and Allgog, in the history of what happened to Asgard, Odin, and Thor in this world, like I would read that story in a heartbeat, especially if it's written by Jason Aaron. But after this, when we go to Dr. Spectrum, who's flown up to the moon to get a better view, and he's immediately attacked by Thanos, who in this case has the Infinity Rings instead of stones, which in this reality don't appear to be as much of a threat, like the rings just do the car dealership thing. But after this, following Blade, he then finds Thor, and Blade lets him know that he remembers Thor telling him about his history of Odin sending him to Earth and pretty much the identity of Donald Blake, but Thor doesn't remember any of that happening. He doesn't know anything about the Avengers, and he doesn't even remember Mjolnir. But while Blade is talking to him and Thor's getting worked up, lightning starts crackling outside, and Blade tries to tell him like, you know that's you, right? And he tries to get him to sober up and like remember, but instead Thor just goes off, he tells him to get lost, and he just throws up on the floor. But from there, Blade doesn't try to persuade Thor any further, like he just walks away and leaves him be. But it's from here where Blade's journey, it catches up with what we had seen earlier with the Black Skull at the nation's capital, which before had jumped from like Blade and Robbie Reyes to days later when all these different villains escaped the negative zone. But in the time between with Blade traveling around and figuring things out, like this is what brought him back. Because when he comes here looking for Nighthawk, who's supposed to be like your smartest man in the world, world's greatest detective, like Blade comes here to find out like if he knows the truth like Blade knows the truth. And when he gets there, Nighthawk tells him like, I know you, you're Blade, you're this 2-bit cutthroat, you need to go back to London. Which then has Blade kind of like, well, okay, well then you do know me. But then when Nighthawk asks Blade like, if you pretty much come here to try your luck, and while they're fighting these dudes off, Blade just takes one of these dudes' heads and he tells Nighthawk like, look buddy, there is no world, like there's nowhere where you can lay a hand on me and not lose it. Which like, man, he probably hurt the man's feelings. But Nighthawk declines the 1v1, telling Blade that he has other things to do like save the world. And Blade tells him like he's trying to do the same thing. And really Blade was just trying to find one other person that he could look in the eye and just confirm that he's not crazy and just know that this whole world is just one big lie. And with talking to Nighthawk here, he pretty much got that confirmation. And when Nighthawk takes his eyes off of him, Blade disappears and he goes on to make his next move. But the twisted thing is like throughout this time with Nighthawk being sent here to save Congress or save the members of Congress, like he's being instructed by the president to do it in a specific order to benefit his political agenda. And it's here where we find out that Philip Coulson, who had originally put this team together, that this universe revolves around this team and Philip Coulson is now the president. And we had seen like how this had all pretty much stemmed from Mephisto and how he began to orchestrate this through War of Realms. And we also talked about Mephisto in King of Black when he had taken back his throne as the King of Hell within the Ghost Rider King in Black tie-in. But as far as how Mephisto got it to get this crazy with the entire universe revolving around the Squadron Supreme of America, like I'm still scratching my head on that one. But with continuing to follow Blade, who while he was in DC, he had broken into the Pentagon and he retrieved the last known coordinates of where Captain America disappeared, which of course was a very broad area, but from there he just used his vampire nose to kind of sniff him out. But also at the same time that this is happening, drunk Thor over in Norway, he then slams his drinking horn on the table and it turns into Mjolnir at the same time that Blade finds Captain America. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below to where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Took a little quick break. You gotta get them every now and then. But we'll soon be getting into issue 2 of Heroes Reborn. But let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments and like what you guys think about the whole involvement of Mephisto pulling the strings in the background. Like I'm pretty curious to know what you guys think. But that'll do it for this one, guys. And I'll see you on the next one. Alright, later.